Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Cat's Track. Thank you for subscribing, liking, sharing this with your friends. Today's episode is with our friend, Dwayne Matthews. Dwayne was born in Toronto, however, he lived in Trinidad, Tobago, and Peru. Besides Dwayne's loved ones, he is very passionate about the future of education, specifically the convergence of fourth industrial revolution technologies and the impact and opportunity it will have on work and education. Friends, you'll find his full bio attached. Dwayne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, I'm glad you're here. I look forward to the answers to our questions. I know that you're going to have some interesting ones.
Well, let's hope so. The coffee is settling in, so if you give me about 30 seconds, we're going to be fine.
Oh, I need more coffee, actually, but I'll get there. Anyway, so ready for the questions?
I am.
Awesome. Okay, the biggest challenge you've had in the last few months?
The biggest challenge, I would say the biggest challenge that I've had in the last few months is the amount of pivots all at the same time compressed into the same time frame. So, typically you may have one or two pivots that really sort of are earth shaking and require a little bit of soul searching and then some agility. But 2020 has really provided me with the opportunity to see, just how many of those I could do. So I started out at the beginning of the year consulting on a particular project. Because of COVID-19, that project was completely closed. The CEO of the company came to me and said, hey, what you were doing, we no longer need because of COVID-19, but we actually need this. And is it something that you could do? And so I found myself, I have two children, everybody at home. We live in a midtown Toronto, so nothing super big. I found myself taking 3 courses in the space of 1 week. And going to bed probably about 2:30 to get enough capacity up to come back and say, okay, I'm 70% capable of what you've asked me to do. The other 30% I can learn on the job. And so being able to switch like that all the time has been a big challenge, but it's also been extremely rewarding because it really allows you to see what you're capable of under pressure, and allows you to realize that maybe you don't always need 8 hours of sleep. I've been functioning reasonably well on about 4 to 5 in sprints. So
wow.
Those are some of the big challenges. Yeah.
Well done. That's a great success story inside of a short time. Amazing. Awesome. Okay, what about your 3 things?
My 3 things.
3 things that you want to share with the audience.
Okay.
Your top 3 ideas or whatever you want.
Right. So my top 3 things. So my first thing is really to talk about the transformation of education as it relates to the transformation of work. I believe that we are witnessing probably one of the fastest transformations of industry and paradigm. We have probably about 5 or 6 really profound technologies converging all into one, based on the speed of computer processing. And that is transforming work. So, you and I are having a conversation on Zoom right now. Last year, you may have had 1 or 2 of these. By now, you've probably had a few hundred hours on here on Zoom. What's really interesting about Zoom has gone up maybe 600% in terms of their value. But, we're almost in a place where we have Zoom fatigue. So we almost realize in 24 months from now, if Zoom is not super creative and innovative, they may actually be a thing of the past. And when you think about the speed of that and how profound that is, that's really, really big. Before we started, you were telling me a little bit about opening up a business in the Caribbean. So a lot of people are starting to think, before I went 2 hours, maybe in traffic to and from work. And, I felt like I had to be in front of people to have a conversation. But now people start realizing, well, why don't I set up a business in Barbados? Why don't I set up a business in Bora Bora? Why don't I set up a business in Greece? Why don't I set up a business anywhere? Because I can be anywhere. I can sleep at any time, and I can connect with people just about anywhere on the planet, so long as they have a connection, my connection's fast enough. So if you think about that, and then you go all the way back to education, you realize that we've been preparing students for a factory-like education model, which gets them either into an office building or into some form of manufacturing. And we realize with the digital transformation of work that has profoundly changed. So what does that mean for education, and how do we prepare students for 2030? Now, I know you said 3 things. That was probably maybe 2.5 in one, but I'm pretty comfortable with expanding. I think the other thing that I would like to share is the idea of form versus function. So many of the challenges that we've had in COVID-19 is because we really focus our innovation and our iterations on incremental improvements on the form that we have of any system or anything. And we've lost sight of the function. Let me give you an example. At the beginning, we mentioned that I was born in Toronto and lived a chunk of my life in Trinidad and Tobago. When I came in 1988 with a suitcase, and I had to lug this very large red suitcase through the airport. Today, when I travel through the airports, I'm usually pulling my suitcase on 4 wheels casters. And I really have to ask myself, why did it take so long for us to put wheels on a suitcase, right? Particularly, why did it take so long for us to put wheels on a suitcase that could move in any direction? Considering that the wheel is probably one of our first inventions. Right? And that's because we focused a lot on developing the form of the suitcase. So we thought about size, we thought about color, but we didn't think about function. Another really good example would be the cell phone, right? The relationship between cell phones and entry-level cars. So here in Canada, Ford no longer makes entry-level cars. They don't make the Escapes, the Ford Focus. And one of the big reasons for that is those cars were primarily for young students that were having their first beginner car. And so most people thought every student, when I was young, all I wanted when I turned 16 was a new car. And I wanted a new car because I wanted to go see my friends. But with the advent of social media on the phone, I don't need to go see my friends as much. As a matter of fact, I can connect with hundreds of friends through social media and through different platforms of social media and express myself. So my desire for a car goes down. And so we see that the whole entry-level car market on the planet has been impacted by a cell phone. So again, form versus function. The last point is, how does that impact bigger pictures of real life? Well, consider at the beginning of our pandemic, we realized that we needed more beds, more ICU beds, more ventilators, and more hospitals. In about 10 days, China built a hospital. And here we are at the end of the year, and we haven't built one new hospital in Canada. As a matter of fact, we're still struggling to have people decide if they'd like to wear a mask or not. So really, we struggle with form versus function, and we struggle with scaling innovation in an emergency. And I think that's because we focus so much on optimizing form versus looking at function. So those would be my 3 things, sort of wrapped in 2 things into one.
I love it. Very profound, Dwayne. Thank you so much for sharing. And what about in closing, your what opportunity do you see, your legacy or good news story?
So, it's interesting that you use the term good news. I'm an innovation evangelist, and one of the things about an innovation evangelist is the term evangelism is spreading the good news. And so one of the good news things that I believe is, much of the way that we thought about the future, much of the opportunities that we thought about that we would have in the future, those opportunities are here. And we struggle to see them a lot of times because we focus on form over function. But I believe that if we switch our mindsets to focusing on function over form, then we can go and we can find the technological tools and the innovations and techniques to give us the outcomes that we want. So if we spend a lot less time on form, a lot less time on what tribe we belong to, and more time on function and the outcomes that we'd like to see, we would realize that we have a lot of tools. I'll give you an example. if I want my son or daughter to read sooner, once upon a time, I would read 3 books a night. But now, because of my cell phone, I can actually read 3 books a night, but I can give my daughter another 7 books to listen to and look at. If I do that on a consistent basis, right, she'll be having an exponential experience versus what I was capable of doing before.
Yeah.
If we think about that, I can take that to the Caribbean where I'm from. So in the Caribbean, when I grew up, the teacher was the gatekeeper of knowledge. They held all the knowledge. So my success depended on the teachers that I had in front of me. That's no longer true. I have YouTube, I have videos. In the Caribbean, my cousins have access to HarvardX courses. So they can essentially teach themselves all the way from kindergarten, all the way through high school, all the way into lynda.com, all the way into Harvard right now in real time. And if they wanted to, they could spin and go right to video. They could go to TV. So all of the things that we want to do, I mean, even if we thought about feeding the planet, we have enough food to feed everybody. We don't have a food problem. We have a distribution problem. We have, I mean, even down there in Calgary where you are, Calgary has one of the best spots on the planet for renewable energy, ironically, in Canada. And so it really is about, if Calgary becomes an energy hub as opposed to an oil hub, all kinds of opportunities sort of open up. So it really is about looking at the function and being obsessed with function and outcome versus form and incremental innovation. So that would be my good news, is that most of what we need is here. And I believe that once we get to the other side of the pandemic, there's going to be enough people, not everybody, but enough people are going to be focusing on that. And it's going to be a tremendous amount of opportunity and innovation in the next 10 years.
I agree with you. Yeah, what a great attitude, and very wise, Dwayne. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Everyone, that is Dwayne Matthews. Check out the cool stuff that they're working on. You'll see his full bio attached. And thank you again for joining us on Cats Track today. See you soon.